Wow, this is classic. Hey, this is going to be a great show. Just looking forward to today. Obviously, you probably have heard the news. We have a new pope, Pope Leo, who is an American. We're going to speak into that a little bit more. Good afternoon, Joanne. Yes, the comment section is open. We are live right now on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and X. So get out there, like, subscribe, share with friends, join the comment section. If you have questions or concerns or something has struck you, by all means, share it in the comment section. We'll try to get to. Hey, I don't know if you heard or not, but boy, what a switcheroo. My wife and I were talking about it, Mrs. Producer, the old bait and switch. The lead team for the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, her lead team yesterday here in my home state of Illinois, Springfield, Illinois, did the old switcheroo to the resistance movement by letting them believe that they were going to be doing a press conference. Kristi Noem was outside of the governor's mansion, which of course drew all of the resistance down to the governor's mansion. And lo and behold, they had a different plan for their announcement. They covered it at the corner where there was a horrific crime from a gentleman who, and I said gentleman, I don't like to use that term. Dan Bongino referred to them as demon savages. That's more accurate, from an individual who is here in this country illegally and murdered another person. In fact, there are other crimes, and that is going to be more detailed on Tuesday's show. So if you're with us today, don't miss Tuesday's show. I'm going to have a special guest on who has done a deep dive on all of the wherewithal of the individual who was covered yesterday in Kristi Noem's press conference. I do have a special guest. I know that he is a very, very busy person, so we're going to just wait till he jumps in. But until then, so much is out there, and happening. Why would Kristi Noem decide to come to Illinois? Well, I've got a theory on this. I think that Kristi Noem came to send a message, not only on behalf of the Trump administration, but also on behalf of the Department of Justice, who has filed suit against the governor and a few other actors here in the state of Illinois. But Kristi came to send a message, and message has been received. Now, the screechers and all of the naysayers here in Illinois, our leadership, which is the resistance, of course, they call themselves the firewall against Trump's administration. They've come out and made some pretty brazen statements and comments about who Kristi Noem is and what they're calling her a monster. They're calling her a whole plethora of other things. Once again, it's all projection. It's all gaslighting. That's what they do. We realize that it's not going to change. They're going to continue down that path. And so it is it is what we're confronted with here in my home state. Thankfully, hopefully you don't necessarily reside in Illinois. If you do, well, you're here for the fight like I am. In fact, that's what I have, professed from this microphone. I'm not leaving Illinois. Illinois is my home. My wife and I are here. We have family here. We were born here. We were raised here. We actually understand what this state looked like prior to the invasion of the radical left. And that's what they've done over the past 20 years, especially after Mike Madigan got the speakership some 40 years ago. They had a plan, and they operated their plan. And we're going to talk about that because I believe that that's the only way forward for us here in Illinois. And this, once again, is kind of ground zero. The rest of the country, for the most part, I mean, there's other pockets like California, New York. Michigan used to be a pocket like that, obviously changed their ways in 2024, going for Trump. Wisconsin went for Trump. Minnesota, obviously, is another one of those painstaking radical left Bolshevik-controlled states. Unfortunately, most of Minnesota is a red state. The only part of Minnesota, for the most part, that really is blue is Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is kind of the theme throughout our country, that metropolitan areas, urban areas, tend to lean into the communist socialist way of existing. And I get it. If I lived in those cities with millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people, it would be hard not to figure out how to live in a collective community, because it wears you out. I don't know about you. Definitely for me, the best part of visiting Chicago is seeing the Sears Tower in my rearview mirror as I'm exiting on I-55 headed back to Central Illinois. There's a lot of land in this United States of America. I don't know why it is that people seem to collect to big urban areas. I don't see the necessary appeal. If you're out there and you're part of the land of Lincoln and you reside in Chicago or near St. Louis, please, I'd like to hear your comments. Yes, big cities are cool to visit. Obviously, I love to go watch the Chicago Cubbies at Wrigley Field. Uh, but yes, they come with a lot of challenges. I just saw today that Brandon Johnson is out there continuing to weave and sow division and deceit in what he plans to do. And he continues to double down on his announcements of what he believes the vision of Chicago should be. This is a man who, now he's in office, has a under a 10% approval rating. It is just mind-boggling. Jim says, Schneider, good to have you here, Jim. The best thing to come out of Chicago is 55 South. I like that. That's a good one. Wanda says that she's in Illinois, unfortunately, Wanda. But you know what? This is a great state. I truly believe there is no other state in the United States of America that's positioned like the state of Illinois. Illinois is strategically positioned geographically, the resources, the highways and byways, the agricultural industry here in our state. We are the crossroads of America. We have Chicago. Chicago is a great city. Unfortunately, it is a corrupt city and has been corrupted, unfortunately, by the Democrats. They have had control of that city for a very, very long time. In fact, I think the last Republican mayor in Chicago, and Mrs. Producer, check me on this, fact check me, I think was in 1914. It could be I transcribed the numbers and it was 1941, but I'm pretty certain it was 1914. So more than 100 years ago. Even if it was 1940, it's going on 100 years since they've had a Republican. If you're steeped in the history of Chicago, you understand a lot of the Chicago machine politics and how they do things. They don't have Republicans sitting on their city council, or what they call wards. The essence of the city council. They're not council people, they're wards. So yeah, I mean that's what we face. Yes, there she is, Mrs. Producer, right on the spot. William Hale Thompson served as mayor of Chicago from 1915 to 1923, and again from 1927 to 1931, known as Big Bill. He is the most recent Republican to have served as the mayor of Chicago. So there it is, over 100 years ago, or at 100 years, is the last time a Republican mayor served in the city of Chicago. Just going to double check here to make sure that I haven't received any. Just reminder. Yep, got it. All right. But yes, this is what we do in the interim. Is we await a guest, a very special guest. I put it out on Facebook, and I'm hopeful, and I get it. I mean, there are times when we arrange guests and guests aren't able to to land properly for a plethora of reasons. Um, because we're all busy people, you know, making time to be a part of a conversation where we're talking about these very sensitive issues, especially when it comes to the safety and security of our own home state, Illinois, and what Illinois has become and what Illinois can become. And I do believe that we're going to hear more and more from me from behind this microphone going forward in the future about the sometimes I get text messages too, and I have to make sure that I attend to them. But you're going to hear more and more about what it's going to take to restore the Republican Party in Illinois, therefore restoring Illinois. I have to do a little heart here for Mrs. Producer because she communicates that way. So I'm going to go back and take a quick look here. Oh, there it is. Okay. And she sent them at 4:10. Sorry about this. Okay. It could be a much better with better government leadership, taxes out of control across the board, real estate, fuel, etc. MIGA, make Illinois great again. Very good, John. See, I picked up on that. We must work to change the mindset of the 4 counties that control Illinois, McLean being one of them. I agree, John. You're right. Spot on. And that's what I'm just going to go into that because obviously we're waiting my very special guest, and he is not with us yet. But what is it going to take? And here it is. It's really a simple plan. And I kind of alluded to this the other day on the DPB show. It's not about necessarily the numbers. Biblically speaking, I love to reference the Bible because I believe it is the basic instruction before leaving earth that all of us should understand. There's nothing new under the sun. The Bible tells us that. Situations somewhat change, but people don't, and the circumstances. State GOP leadership needs to change. You're right, Ryan Mack. Where are you right now? There you go. See, he's coming at us he's not live in the studio, so he's out also enjoying the comment section. Definitely continue bringing the comments. But it's not about the numbers. It's not that we need more people actively participating. We need more voters. We need more low propensity voters, which we know the state is steeped with, both Democrat, both Republican, Libertarian, Green Party. We need to unify around the very common core of beliefs that we have, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so the numbers of people involved aren't as critical as the people themselves that are involved. Are they truly selling out? Are they truly all in? Because that's how we're going to restore not only the Illinois Republican Party, but Illinois. It's great, and I so appreciate all the events that are out there. You see it on social media, whether that's a red gala going on, but none of those things move the needle. Yes, they're all about fundraising, and ultimately, fundraising, there's not enough money that can be raised in Illinois to overcome the coffers of not only J.B. Pritzker, but the pensioners, all of the unions, all the NGOs that stand behind this movement. They used to call it, what was it? All in Illinois. Because that's what it is. It's not about you and I. It's about a sector of Illinois, mostly those people on public pensions, those people in unions, those people in non-governmental organizations. They're the ones who are driving the electorate right now. If they need additional votes, they can pick those votes up over and over and over again. What do we do as those who believe, whether Libertarian, Democrat, Republican, in the messaging behind Illinois and the land of Lincoln, and returning to, like John said, reducing taxation in Illinois, bumping up education so we're one of the leaders rather than one of the failing public school systems in the nation. What do we do to make Illinois more attractive? I know that Governor Pritzker likes to laud that we are attracting all of these businesses. No, we're not. That's not true. We're losing outside of this influx of illegal immigrants coming into the state. We're losing population in Illinois, hence the reason that Pennsylvania became the 5th largest state and we became the 6th largest state based on population. We lost a congressional seat out of that. We now have 17 congressional districts rather than 18, and we're slowly moving the needle, unfortunately, in the opposite direction. Now, Governor Pritzker has high hopes that he can continue to add to the electorate, and most of those people will be non-citizens of the state of Illinois. That's what their dream is that whole demographic destiny replacement theory. So we've lost 1 million people over the course of a decade. He would like to replace those 1 million people with non-documented illegal immigrants. And there are plenty of programs here in our state, which most of you might be aware of, that allow illegal immigrants not only to get a driver's license, but to register to vote. Once again, voting is where the fraud comes in if they're illegal immigrants. Registering to vote is not a crime in Illinois. You got the motor voter registration, which is something that has helped the influx of people coming in and how you can use that. And so there's just so many different things that we as Illinoisans, whether libertarian, Democrat, Green Party, Republican, need to do to secure the land to Lincoln again. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I do see that in studio we have our guest, and this is a very special person. Many of you already know him. You're probably following him on Facebook. I believe that when it comes to the thought leaders and people who are really doing what I just told you, we would like to have more people involved in the process, but we need the people who are involved in the process to be going all in. And this man, I would say, I can speak to his commitment to the state of Illinois because I watched him back in July of 2020 sue the governor on behalf of Darren Bailey and win. And there's very few attorneys that have taken on Governor Pritzker and actually won. And one of those people is my guest right here on the screen, Tom DeVore. Tom, welcome to the DPB show.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Tom, I'll tell you, you're about as busy as it gets. I am like my wife. We are, I think this is what was needed coming out of 2022. And you and I were both up in Bolingbrook when the Central States Committee had their meeting. And a bunch of us showed up there with a lot of concerns about going forward from 2022. And unfortunately, we came out of that meeting and it was definitely a dud. And I believe that you and many others tried to circle the wagons and find some common ground and try to figure out a forward-looking plan to restore not only the Illinois Republican Party, but then restore Illinois. We came out of that meeting and unfortunately it was a zero. It was a dud. It took a few months, almost a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years to displace the chair of the Illinois Republican Party, which you have mentioned on your social media page. Was that necessarily the solution? Because replacing somebody for the sake of replacing somebody isn't necessarily going to change the direction of the party.
That's right.
And you pointed that out many times over. And I'd like to get in and pick your brain about that. But first and foremost, we had talked about it going into the lead of the show, is Kristi Noem, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, made her appearance here in the state of Illinois. I believe personally that was to send a message to our governor and many others in the state of Illinois that they're on the radar and President Trump's not happy about it, and they want to come in and send a message. Unfortunately, very few of our Republican representatives ended up making an appearance at this press conference, and I know you covered it well. And, so outside of belaboring what we already know, we have a core group of people that will show up. What do you think, you know, moving forward, what does it take? What will it take to get more people involved to the point that they just have had enough?
You're talking getting more people involved. You're talking the electorate, or you're talking the leadership or elected officials. What context you want me to put that?
Well, I would say all of the above because, as you heard me say, I don't know if it's necessarily about the numbers. I had this revelation the other night that we stand as a precinct committee model very short in membership across the state. I mean, we are, I should say, elected positions in the precinct committee model. We're about 6,000 short on 10,500 precincts.
Right.
But when it comes to the General Assembly, we're short, which I believe is there's a direct correlation between being short in the General Assembly and being in the super minority and what is happening in all of our counties. I also believe that we are at a deficit when it comes to county chair people, because there are a few county chair people who are truly all in, to take a page out of J.B. Pritzker's book, All in Illinois. So I think overall, not only, how do you see this thing walking out? I mean, because we can sit back and talk till we're blue in the face. We know the results. We've seen it. Yesterday was a perfect example of that, with the Freedom Caucus, for the most part, being the only elected positions there. I did see a couple other, Andrew was there, Chesney from up north. I did see Terry Bryant there. I did see Resin was there. There's a picture on Secretary Noem's X page that shows her front and center. But that was more grandstanding. And ultimately, I can't believe that we didn't have a turnout of 40 Republican state reps who are Republican and 18 state senators. That would at least been 58 people gathered around Kristi Noem.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, again, it's no surprise. And keep in mind, I agree with what you said. You have the Freedom Caucus members. You also had Marty McLaughlin there, who is not in the Freedom Caucus, but probably for all intents and purposes is a de facto member. You mentioned Senator Chesney, who is a Freedom Caucus senator. He's the only senator in the Freedom Caucus. And besides that, from the House of Representatives, the only other person that you had there was Representative John Cabello. So you had 7 state reps. John, for some amount of time, has had a relationship in some part with the Trump administration. So, of course, John was there. But beyond that, again, you had 33 House Republicans that were not there. Why they weren't there, I've been talking to some people, and it appears that Tony McCombie never invited them. From what I can tell, Tony didn't go out of her way to make any phone calls to figure out what it would take to get connected to the right people on the advance team for secretary. And so she didn't get it done. Now, you saw there were several senators there, as you noticed. A lot of that was grandstanding. Besides Senator Chesney, there was another senator there that would probably identify with the Trump administration. They were just, standing there trying to get a photo op. But nonetheless, set that aside, Senator Kern, who's a minority leader of the Senate, did take the initiative to get a hold of the right people and figure out how to orchestrate that with at least some members of his caucus, the Senate caucus. And so you had, Senator Bryant, you had Senator, I think Sally Turner was there, Dave Severson, Chapin Rose, a couple of others were there that I can't recall off the top of my head, Steve McClure. And so that, there was more of a turnout there, but all 18 of them should have been there. I agree with you, but they just weren't. But where Tony really dropped the ball is she didn't even go to the efforts that Senator Kern went to even contact anybody in the Trump administration to try to get notice. I mean, the Capitol Facts put it out there the day before that the secretary was coming. Tony could have taken some initiative, but again, it's not high on her priority list, obviously. And so she's catching a lot of heat from her caucus, which she should.
Well, it's, Tom, the thing is, you had asked in conversation offline about the statements that are being made. I so appreciate the fact that Governor Pritzker is quick to make a statement. Alexei Julianis is quick to make a statement. We haven't really heard an official statement from the House Minority Leader or from the Senate Minority Leader to let us know exactly why it is that this was somewhat kept under wraps. And then John himself, the Senate Minority Leader, made an apology about Kristi.
Yes, I mean, John, I've talked to John several times, and he's his own human being, but John absolutely was there for a photo op to give an appearance. He never made a statement in support of what the secretary had said. John's never made a statement on anything that Republicans hold dear. He just doesn't do that. He kind of lays in the background all of the time, which is another conversation. But then he apologized because the secretary made reference to a family in her conversations about illegals. And again, that was just completely in bad taste on John's part. He should have never come out apologizing for that, and it was just, it's a lack of political awareness, in my opinion. And, of course, Governor Pritzker came out with a statement, and other Democrats, because they're going to fight for what they hold dear, for what their party holds dear, right? That's just what the Democrats do. And you mentioned Representative McCombie. Now, Representative McCombie did do a little video, but here's the important thing, David. It shouldn't take the Secretary of Homeland Security coming to Illinois to cause these Republican leaders to be fighting for Republican principles. That's the bigger conversation that I've been having with people. Why haven't they been out there doing this all along? I mean, it's been 25 years in this state that Republicans, for the most part, as an organized or a party, have done nothing to fight for Republican values, which has us in the super minority. Tony should be talking about this all of the time. John Kern should be talking about it all of the time. And they don't talk about this. They don't talk about boys and girls sports. They don't talk about boys and girls locker rooms. They don't talk about illegal immigration. They don't talk about any of the things that Republicans and a lot of Democrats take issue with. And it's really unfortunate. So.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, Tom, because it allows me to add this to the stage. There you see it. I'll blow it up a little bit for you. That's what it's looked like since 1999. I can roll it back a little bit to show you that when you advance it even back historically, there was a time from 92 to 02 where we at least made a dent on the governor's side of the ledger and all in the Senate side. But unfortunately, as you spoke into the 2 decades, or the last 2 decades, we obviously haven't been able to overcome the trifecta. I mean, for a brief period of time from 15 to 18, we had a governor in Springfield who considered himself a Republican. So
he did. And what's interesting, though, is a couple of things. One, you'll get a lot of people talk about, gerrymandered districts since, around 2000. Gerrymandered districts has nothing to do with the statewide that you just had,
yes,
especially with the governor's race, etc. And even Ronner, I agree with the comment you said about him. But I think what's more important is immediately after Ronner, you have J.B. Pritzker. And J.B. Pritzker, with the way that he has, from a structural and an organized fashion, has altered the way that elections are run in Illinois for the near future. A Republican will never win another statewide election in Illinois again until we do some of the things that we've talked about before with our own organization. And that conversation, it's just not happening. No. And one of the things that it takes, which is what I just get so passionate about, is it takes, again, it's going to take organization, it's going to take money, but it takes an electorate. It takes a base Republican electorate that believes that its party is fighting for what they hold dear. Yes. And in Illinois, the Republican Party And you can start at the top. You can start with Kathy Salvi. You can start with the State Central Committee. You can talk to John Kern. You can talk to Tony McCombie. You can talk to their leadership. They are not fighting for Republican values. I use this expression. I'm like, look, it's a bottom of the ninth, and there's 2 outs, and there's bases are loaded for the other side, man. And if we want to fight, we are not going to love and legislate. You can take this, David. We are not going to love and legislate our way out of the super minority. We got to fight our way out of the super minority, and it's not going to be easy. And it's going to have to take risks, and people are going to be uncomfortable. And you know what? Tony McCombie may lose her cushy leadership role. John Kern may lose his cushy leadership role. But we have to fight. And if we don't fight, we will be irrelevant as a Republican Party for the rest of history.
You know, I shared this the other day on the DPB show, and I'm going to see if I can find it. But it basically was 5 of the, and I'm not one to use this word, but you know, you've learned that I can, on every now and then I'll use a colorful metaphor. 5 of the most badass American soldiers and their acts of valor. And you probably have heard of this guy. This guy was Sergeant York. Did you hear of Sergeant York?
I've heard the name, yes.
So Sergeant York was pinned down by 32 Germans. And he proceeded to pick off 20 of them with his rifle. He was flanked by another, I think it was 6 German soldiers, and he pulled out his .45 caliber and he picked off 6 more. And he likened it to turkey shooting. I mean, he's running. He couldn't lie down. He was upright. He came upon another German soldier at close range and was about ready to trigger and pull the trigger and kill this German soldier. And he said, basically, "Are you British?" And he said, "No, I'm an American." He said, "I surrender." And proceeded to walk out 132 German soldiers. And the reason I bring that up, because it reminds me of the tenacity that you have to fight with. And I believe that's the tenacity that you presented in the courtroom against J.B. Pritzker. I believe it is the heart of Darren Bailey. I think Darren Bailey is more of a lover than a fighter, but I believe that he can, that he can show up to the fight. And I know we need more fighters. So here's a proposition, Tom, and you let me know what you think of this.
All right.
Because I've been on the phone talking to other like-minded people, such as yourself and people we met on the campaign trail. And obviously that we're supportive of your lawsuits and things like that. I don't know if we can wait going into 26 and 28 for anyone in the current Central States Committee or in the leadership positions or the county chairs. We have to assemble, as I sent a text to Darren, and actually I put it on his Facebook Live. We got to get the band back together. I was just looking through my Google's Drive, and during the 22 gubernatorial race, not only the primary, but the general election, we put together 102 county coordinators and 13 regional coordinators. And I look at those names, and some of those names I see commenting on your social media posts. So I know that they've hung in there. Some of them I think have gotten discouraged and maybe have gone away. But I think it's time to put the band back together. It's a new team, right? Building a bench. That's what we did back in 22. We built a bench. You were part of that. Obviously, I think that was the momentum. Unfortunately, I don't believe we had the proper game plan to get 2.2 million votes. In fact, I don't believe there has been a Republican to get over 2 million votes since Mark Kirk back in the 2016 U.S. senatorial race against Tammy Duckworth, which she ended up with 3 million. But doing basically what we were doing before, because we didn't have any help from the Illinois GOP because it was a primary, and I get that. They don't endorse, or at least they say they don't endorse. And I think it's time that we just run with the organization that we already put in place. I think that's where the hunger is. I don't believe it exists anywhere else.
It doesn't. And a couple of things. One, when you talked about the 2016 race, David, keep in mind that was a presidential cycle.
Yes.
So you come to a midterm.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, I think it was 94, maybe somewhere, there was one governor's race that the Republicans got over 2 million because as I recall, somebody had told me the Democrat candidate was so disfavored by the Democrats that they kind of supported the Republicans. So that was a long time ago. I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, in a midterm cycle, a Republican governor, at least in the last 20 something years, has never broke 2 million votes ever. And keep in mind, until J.B. Pritzker created the machine he created, they never broke 2 million in a midterm. Yeah. All that Governor Pritzker did, all that he did is he said, look, in a presidential cycle, because people vote more in presidential cycles, it's just reality. It's human nature. They would push 2.6 to 3 million votes in a presidential cycle. We were always behind them still, 300,000 or 400,000, 500,000. But in a midterm, they're back into that 1.6 to 1.8 range. And so they had over 1 million voters that would vote Democrat in a presidential that wouldn't vote in a midterm. Now, keep in mind, these people are traditionally, for the Democrats, they're Democrat-thinking people. That's just who they are as a human being. So all that Pritzker did is he spent millions of dollars, created the infrastructure with the technology and the manpower to go out with permanent vote by mail, and found hundreds of thousands of those Democrats that were voting already. Yep. And he brought them into the midterm cycle, and he increased voter turnout to 2.3 to 2.5 million in a midterm. It's not like all of a sudden a bunch of new people woke up in 2018 and said, I think we're going to vote for JB instead of the Republican because JB is so great. That's not what happened. It was just an organized machine effort. Now, to answer your question more specifically, the State Central Committee is never going to do anything in the near future.
Yeah.
There are 17 people on the State Central Committee, many good people. My senator, one of them, is on it. He's a great guy. But collectively, those 17 people is the most dysfunctional group that I have ever seen in my entire life. They do not do anything. And Kathy Salvi's the party chair. I like Kathy.
Yeah.
Kathy's a nice lady. Yep. Kathy does not have the skill set that it takes to lead the state party. She would be a good chair for a fundraising committee, excellent at that. But in order to be the chair of the party, you have to, you know what you have to do, David? You have to make people unhappy.
Yes.
And Kathy is not going to make people unhappy because she's too damn nice.
Yep.
And so the state party's not going to do anything. Tony McCombie, you know what Tony McCombie cares about? 21.
Yep.
That's how many people she needs to stay in leadership.
That's the magic number.
That's all she cares about. And if Tony is saying, okay, now, does she want the party to go from 40 to maybe 50 House members?
Yep.
Probably at some basic level. But if Tony has figuring out a plan to go from 40 to 50, then her new number's 26.
Yeah.
So she doesn't want to get 10 new members in the House unless she knows that at least 6 of them are Tony supporters, because she doesn't want to lose her $50,000 a year leadership position. Yep. John Kern's the same way. His magic number is 10. So these people are more concerned, and it's as much our fault as citizens as it is these, who has gotten into our party over the last 25 years. They're not wanting to fight the Democrats because it places a risk on them. I say it all the time. They are more scared of the Democrat Party coming after them than they are the Republican electorate, because the Republican electorate has gotten complacent over the decades and just doesn't really hold them accountable. And that's what I've been trying to change. Hold our own elected officials accountable. So damn it, they'll go out here and start fighting for Republican principles. Otherwise, we're never going to get to 2 million. We're never going to get to 2.1 million. We'll be losers in the state forever.
Yeah. Well,
we got to do it ourselves.
No, you know, the unity thing, that's interesting because obviously they had the big red gala, and of course they're gonna have a lot of red galas, and I
Tony
said,
wore a blue dress, yeah, at the Red Gala.
yeah, yeah, and wearing the blue dress to the red gala, um, but we're gonna have red galas, and I understand there's a certain amount of fundraising you have to do, but it's not about moving the needle, and I'm like you, Tom. I like some of these people. They're nice people. I get it. I get it, but it's not results driven. You can't we just showed that graphic. Look at the stretch of the time that we have not been in any position of leadership, real leadership where we're driving the policy rather than just, being a joke, the brunt of a joke at these events that they have because we are unfortunately right now where we stand, we're the uni party. And the uni party that happens to be the Republican Party is talking about unity, which is part of the uni party. I find that interesting. But Byron Donald speaks up at this event in Chicago a couple weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
and he said, I've heard through the grapevine, you people are a disgrace, man. You're basically, he didn't say disgrace, but he said you're dysfunctional. And until you work that out. Well, unfortunately, I don't think there is working that out because I believe it's just a matter of we're not the same. And I knew that, and you've helped me in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to the electorate. And when I saw and did some more research on the numbers, you're right. It was just a shift. And how easy is it to go out to the unreliable voters, which I believe anymore, most of the unreliable voters are probably Republicans versus Democrats because they've engaged and mobilized those people and fortified some of those fronts through NGO groups, through the public pension unioneers, and
That's
they
right.
continue to grow their base. I couldn't quite, and you know this because I was speaking into it down at Montgomery County last year at their Lincoln Day dinner,
I heard.
where you were there front row, and you're the one that challenged me. And I said, "You're right, Tom," because I started seeing this that they went from Quinn in 2014 with about 1,700,000, just
Yep.
a few thousand or 60,000 behind Rauner, to JB in 2018, and they advanced from 1.7 million to 2.5, so 800,000 votes.
That's right.
And you just explained, and you had said this I think it was a couple weeks ago. Don't get upset about how fiery JB is or Alexi calling Kristi Noem a monster. I mean, that's purely
It doesn't matter.
hyperbole. Yeah, it doesn't matter. What matters is, are we going to take a page out of their book? I want to duplicate what the Democrat Party has done.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we don't have paid professionals doing it, and they're going to continue to be able to fund their races, and they're going to be able to fund their machine. We're going to have to do it similar to that band of people that fought back against the British Empire because we're not going to have the resources.
Well, we don't have the resources. We have some resources, but here's another issue to consider, David, is that the system and the organization that the Democrats have now come to appreciate can win elections, getting the votes. Uh, Here's what it does. But before I give you that, I'm going to go back to when you said J.B. Pritzker when he was railing out in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
I tell people, I'm like, just turn that off.
Yeah.
Turn it off
Yeah.
because it doesn't alter the outcome of elections.
Nope.
It doesn't do anything. He's just trying to churn up his base because in Washington, D.C., the Republicans are in charge and the Democrats are in the back seat. In Illinois, the Democrats are in charge and the Republicans are in the back seat. So
Yep.
on the national stage, the Democrats are like us in Illinois. And all that J.B. Pritzker was trying to do is to incite and to invigorate the Democrats across the nation to rise up and to start competing and to not be discouraged and to vote. He wants them to vote.
Yeah.
And so that's what we have to do here. So I just turn him off. But in getting back to the point about the votes, what does it take to get the votes?
Yep.
It's the votes of the people that don't listen to the noise. When someone in a midterm cycle, which is coming up in 26,
Yep.
As the year goes on in 25 and we get into the primaries and we roll around into 26, people that traditionally don't vote in a midterm are not listening to any of that.
Mm-hmm.
When they voted in November of 24 for President Trump got 2.45 million votes in Illinois in 20 and in 24. It was only like 3,000 votes different.
Without spending hardly any money.
Without spending hardly any money.
Yep.
Good point.
Yep.
Those people, there are about 700,000 of them who will not vote in 26, regardless of all the noise. You could spend $100 million on TV and all of this stuff, and those people are turning it off because they're not voting till 28 because nobody has convinced them interpersonally that voting in 26 is important.
Yep.
And that takes building connections and relationships with a ground game. It doesn't take TV, the old traditional TV and all of that nonsense. But you know who on this ground game that the Democrats have employed and that you and I are talking about now, and it's all I talk about, you know who does not make money off of that? The consultants.
Yes.
The consultants that are in Tony McCombie's ear and John Kern's ear about how we as Republicans should be electioneering.
Yep.
Is the old methodology that's not speaking to the voter groups that we need to win. They are going to say, let's send this mail, let's do these digital ads, let's do this TV, let's do this radio. That is not going to win elections anymore in Illinois because it's not getting to that low propensity voter. You got to knock on their freaking door.
It didn't even work for the $50 million that Ken Griffin spent on Richard Irvin to try to mail in.
In that
didn't even work. It didn't even work on his own within the Republican Party.
It didn't. But let's come to a general election. And again, I'm going to use this purely as a comparison. It has nothing to do. This has little to do with candidates. Now, you have to have a decent candidate as a statewide. It's important. But let me give you an example. Do you know who Shannon Teresi is?
Yes, I do. Yep.
She
ran with you, obviously, for comptroller.
You know how much money she spent on her statewide race?
Probably under 20,000.
About 60.
Okay. Well, I was
60,000. She got 1.65 million votes.
Yeah.
Darren's race between the Prof PAC and Darren spent how much? 50 million.
$50 million. Yep.
And again, this is not a criticism of Darren. It's just the reality.
No. Darren and I have had this conversation.
He got 1.75 million.
Yeah.
He got 100,000 more votes than Shannon with $50 million. My race, again, not comparing me to Darren. I spent 300,000. I got 40,000 more votes than Darren. Yeah. And the point is that this incremental number of votes that we need once we break 1.8 million, there's a diminishing return that's almost infinite to where those votes cannot be garnered by just blowing millions of dollars on traditional electioneering. It has to be spent on the ground, organized with data and customer resource management solutions where you're building. It's almost like taking a business model from a sales and marketing perspective and going out into the market and building those relationships to get someone to not buy a good or a service, but to vote. And this is what we're not doing. And it's why we can't win. And it's, why the Tonys and the Johns of the world, the Noreens and the Terry Bryants draw ire from me because they're not wise enough or learned enough, or maybe they just don't care to actually work on these things. It's not even in their conversation. David.
So you just hit upon something, which is another part of my plan. And at least I have spent some time, and probably more time than Mrs. Producer, that would be my beautiful wife, would like me to spend on it, because
type of question down there you didn't ask me to answer either.
Oh, wait, did she? See, there. Hold on. Let me go back. Mrs. Producer, can you put it back up? I got so enthralled because she also has these eyeballs on my camera up here, Tom, that she says, stop looking down or stop looking at the screen, because that's disrespectful to your guest. How do we break through the grassroots groups that are territorial elites? Yes. And here's Mrs. Producer. Thank you, Tanya, my beautiful wife, who just turned 58 yesterday, Tom. Happy birthday to
Mrs. Day over 48.
Well, that's why I said. You know what I said to her, Tom?
What?
Before I went to bed the other night. I said I've never slept with a 58-year-old woman before, and
I love it. Let me answer that question.
yep,
Couple of things. One is that all of these groups that then they have their friction. When I go into a county, I try not to get into that. You have to give them a common goal.
yeah,
And that goal is to get more votes in their county, right? If I went into Fayette County and there's factions in Fayette County, or I was in Hancock and I was in Schuyler and I'm in Union. I'm talking about how many low propensity voters does your county have by precinct? That's something they'll all come together on. And if they want to bicker amongst themselves about who's the best for this or that, let them do it as long as they are collectively working to raise the vote totals. They'll all coalesce around that, right?
yep.
But there are people that won't necessarily coalesce around that, which is really where the territorial stuff comes in. And that's the incumbent elected Republicans versus all of the grassroots combined. The incumbent elected Republicans will do everything in their power to maintain where they're at. That's really the biggest issue we have is, if a grassroots candidate wants to run for office, a statewide office, they're going to get pounded into political oblivion by the state party and by these caucuses because they don't want anybody in their little swamp. So that's the real territorial issue. But to answer your question, you can get all of these groups together if you give them a common cause. And the common cause is simple. We need 1,300 more votes out of your county in order to get to 550,000 on a statewide level. And of those 1,300 votes, you need 20 out of this precinct. You need 10 out of this precinct, because you can break down where that low propensity fall off is by precinct.
By the block. Yeah, by a block group. You can, you're right. And I've seen those models through L2. I've seen them through Cirrus, through Field Edge. I mean, we have the wherewithal right now to do that. Tom, I found it interesting that the former chair, Don Tracy, put into position a gentleman who was on the Central States Committee. And I'm not here to name names or anything, but this gentleman was commissioned with putting together all the coalitions, and they wanted to get a list from the election integrity group.
I know who you're talking about.
I know you know who I'm talking about. But LS, he was going to be the person that was going to work with all these grassroots movement. And what happened out of that was absolutely nothing zippo. So my beautiful wife, who has been on this before the general election of 22 and was harping at Darren and harping at the Darren's campaign team that we needed to try to get the grassroots together, because ultimately at the end of the day, it was a matter of getting people who are unreliable to the voting booth, or finding if they were willing to receive a vote by mail ballot, or to even go during the 40-day lead up time. So all of these ideas, and you do a much better job of putting this together. And that's why I lean into you, because you have helped me advance my mindset on where we need to go. Here's what I ran by Darren. Outside of going back to the team that we've already assembled, because we know they're committed and they worked their tails off. Unfortunately, I don't believe we had the tip of the spear. We had the right tool in our hands. And I think that tool is, if we're going to spend $75 million to win a governor's race, why would we spend that on a political strategist, a political consultant, or anybody other than the counties, and find those county members who are willing to recruit people? Because Darren tells the story of being up in the inner city of Chicago, seeing a young person that he knew that was a staffer in the Democrat Party.
I was there with.
And he stopped. Yeah, I think you were with him. Yeah, and he stopped her and he said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, look at this. We've got our iPads, and I know they're probably receiving $300 to $500 a day to be out there, making sure that they were collecting as many ballots or informing as many people who have received ballots that they haven't either turned it in, and they can make arrangements to make sure that they got those turned in. So I think if we spent that money, if we're going to spend the money, which I believe there's going to be money spent in the upcoming gubernatorial race, why isn't that money being spent at the countywide level?
Well, that's a good question. And, I've had these conversations with people that have talked about a governor's race in 26. And I am, when I get asked my opinion, I am 100% honest with them. And I said, look, if you give us 30 million bucks till 2030 and let us use the money on the ground, building the infrastructure, county by county with these people, we got a real good chance by 2030 to make a headway, right? We can. If you want to spend $30 million on between now and 2026, your chances of winning a statewide race are really freaking small.
Yeah.
You want to do it, do it. But if anybody's going to tell you you're going to win those races, then let's take out a little bit of skepticism. 2030 is more realistic to me. We wouldn't need 75 million.
Yeah.
We would, 30 or 40 million, because JB Pritzker spent 100 plus, keep in mind, over 8 years.
Yep.
And, that's the conversation but finding someone that's willing to invest that kind of money in Illinois when you have, and I'm going to be a little bit political with you, when we have leadership in both of our caucuses with their primary donor base are left-leaning organizations that don't believe in the Democrat Party, when we have many people in our Republican caucuses that are voting for bills like Green New Deal and Pap smears for men and Amendment 1 and illegal aliens can have to be rented to, or you can be in violation of human. When they see that kind of stuff happening, people outside of Illinois are going, why the hell would I invest $40 million in that? And so until we have a united Republican Party fighting for Republican principles, and it doesn't mean they have to be charging the hill with their MAGA hat on like you and I might have. They don't have to be those kind of people. They have to be solid Republicans that believe in the Republican Party, and they're not afraid to call themselves Republicans. Until we have that, David, nobody's bringing $30 million into Illinois. It's not going to happen.
No. And we know that those people that had those resources, like the Dick Uihleins and the Ken Griffiths, obviously Ken is, not interested in Illinois politics anymore because he runs his company Citadel out of Miami. And Richard Uihlein, bless his heart, he has been one of the only players that is willing to contribute. But I don't know who makes the decision around Dick Uihlein, but they ended up giving Prof $40 million. And I'm trying to still figure out, what did Dan do with it outside of those scream ads that he created, which I don't know if those things actually amounted to anything, but I don't think it.
Look at the voter turnout. Dave. At one point, Darren Bailey got about the same amount of votes as Bruce Rauner, give or take 20, 30, 40,000. All of those scream ads that he was doing up in there didn't move the needle at all.
No.
Not at all. Because as I said 10 minutes ago, the people that you need to vote in that midterm, they're not listening to any of that crap because they're not midterm voters. You got to make them a midterm voter. You got to give them a reason, because right now they're like, not only are they not midterm voters, they're like, why the hell? I could take you in my little county, and I know 50 people that I've had conversations with that don't vote in the midterms, and I'm trying to get them to vote because they're like, what difference does it make, Tom? Which 500, we lost by what, 600,000 votes last time? Why the hell's my one vote? That mentality is the problem, and we don't have a party structure that's giving them something to believe in, right? And now you've got Kristi Noem coming to town. Thank God. And what's that do? You get all of these Republicans. Now they all want to give their little speeches and their little grandstanding about how I'm going to fight for you. And it's like, I don't know. I just don't know.
Well, I'm hopeful that what you have basically, and there it is, folks. You can see it. The Rhino Hunter. Go to his Facebook page. Truly, you are missing out if you are not following Tom. And because, Tom, the reason I even got involved in running against Dan Brady for state representative, at that time it was the 105th district, was because Kyle McCarter was doing a whiteboard presentation. This is back in the early days of Facebook. So he was, I don't
I
even know
remember
how.
Kyle doing it. Kyle was my senator.
Yes, he was your senator. That's right. Because then, yeah. And then the advent of people taking over in that district and the redistricting. But Kyle was adamant about how broke Illinois was, meaning not only fiscally, but morally, spiritually, intellectually. And I
He was
was,
hard on the Republican Party.
what's that?
He was hard on the Republican Party.
He was. And I was an acolyte, and I commented and I reached out to him. And I went down to his office, and I tell this story because at that time, his legislative aide was fresh out of Eastern Illinois University, Jose Durbin, and he was scurrying around the table. And he was trying to draw a path for me to victory, running against an incumbent. And I think he knew in his heart of hearts that I wasn't going to be able to overcome, the machine, the Republican machine, which is not necessarily the Democrat machine, or they could be. They're one and the same. But Kyle impressed upon me the thing that I think that is a messaging. Dan Brady was throwing around legislation and supporting a legislation that would raise the gas tax, which currently is what we have now. And that was the reason that he believed I could beat Dan Brady at that point. Well, unfortunately, I don't think it was bad enough yet in Illinois. And not only that, it took me 2 swings at Dan. One, I got 25% of the vote the first time around, and then 38% of the vote. And there wasn't a third Thrilla in Manila, as Frazier and Ali went after each other. I would have loved a third time at Dan because I think I could have closed the gap. But I said something to one of the political consultants here in our state at a Leadership Institute event. I said, I'm trying to figure this out, Colin. You say that you need a $250,000. Yeah, you say you need $250,000 to win a state rep race. And I just told you that I had $4,000 in 18. I upped it to $12,000 in 20. And I went from 25% to 38% of the vote. So with $12,000, I increased 13%. So that's $8,000. But you're telling me I need another $212,500 to get 12 more percent of the vote?
You're talking in the primary?
This is in a primary.
Yeah, you $250,000 on the primary. But again, I know who you're talking about, and those consultants in general they're political prostitutes. I mean, that's what they do for a living. You can win if you have a winnable primary seat, and there's several of them that are winnable.
Yes.
You can win that thing right now with no more than $50,000.
And that's my point. This particular political consultant at that time, this was in 2018, 2020, or between there, he really wanted me to leave the room because I wasn't holding up to, he was there volunteering his time, hoping to recruit new people that he could get out and utilize his clients. But I guess the point of bringing that up, the Kyle McCarters and everyone like yourself, we're the new generation, and there's got to be a generation after you and myself.
God, I hope so. I don't even want to be doing this.
Yeah, well, that's a fascinating thing. Nobody in their right mind should want to go to DC or Springfield. And I tell Darren that, and Darren laughs because Darren doesn't want to do it. You don't want to do it. I didn't want to do it the 2 times I ran against Dan. And my wife and I, Mrs. Producer, we would love to be doing something other than what we're doing. But we feel for such a time as this, we're called to figure this thing out. And it has been a jigsaw puzzle. And I applaud you because you are the thought leader and the one driving it. And at times I was like,
that's okay. You can say it.
Like, Tom did just say that. I said, oh, I think we lost him there. Hold on. Let's see if I can get him. Tom, I think you went away. But Thomas Stream is it says his video went out. Maybe he'll come back in. If he comes back on stage, it is up against the 5 o'clock hour anyway. We're a little over time here in the DPB show, as we should be, because there's no better person to start charting the course and laying out the plan. Tom doesn't want to be governor. Should he run for governor? Maybe. Attorney general? It doesn't matter. He just told us the God's honest truth. We're not going to win here in Illinois. I think he's there. He is.
Battery died. What were you going to say?
Right. Nope.
I did something and you had your hand in your face.
Yeah, well, I was shrieking at times, but then I grew to learn, because ultimately, Tom, there's no more Mr. Night Sky. Alice Cooper sang the song. Cutesy time is over. That's the Bongino thing. Here's a guy that gave up $4.9 million to take on a position in the federal government as the deputy director of the FBI, or Pete Hegseth giving up $2.9 million in annual salary to take on a couple $100,000 a year. There's a reason these people are doing it, because they know what's at stake. And I think that's where you and I are at. And I'm thankful that you're willing to do this for the people of Illinois, because ultimately I get it. It can be done.
I'm glad you said that, because it's funny. People that only know me on social media and don't know me in real life, it's one thing. But people that I've known a long time and I work with, they kind of chuckle when we're talking, because they're like, that personality on social media, they're like, that's not you necessarily.
No.
They know me as someone that's always being more diplomatic and looking
Yes.
for solutions and trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to win. I mean, I'm a guy that wants to figure out how to win.
Yeah.
And so when they're like, you get the Tony McCombies of the world and the Noreens and the Terry Bryants and them.
And your favorite, Charlie.
Charlie, Chicken Dinner Charlie, unity. And it's gaslighting on their part to try to say, well, we can't win because you're not unified. And my response to them always is, look, my objective is to win for Republicans. And I am here to tell you, none of them have ever run a statewide race. They don't understand it at that level. Us losing in Illinois right now today is not because of the Democrats. The Democrats are not in our way to keep us from winning. We are beating ourselves because we don't have unity within our party that's committed to winning elections. And how do you win elections? You get more votes.
Yep.
They're not committed to that. So that's why they're like, well, why don't you pick on the Democrats? The Democrats aren't the problem.
Yep.
I know how to beat the Democrats. I go get the voters that I already know exist. I got 2.45 million people that voted for the president in this state 2 years, 2 cycles in a row. I need those people. That's who I need to win. I don't need to worry about the Democrats, right? I'm not convincing Democrats of anything. And who's in the way of us getting those 2.45 million people? It's our own party, sadly.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, before we wrap things up, I usually go an hour, and I just told the audience, and go out, like, subscribe, share this. This is the message. Go out to Tom's page. Tom does Facebook Lives often. Tom just went away again. I'm sure he'll come back.
I'm back now. Sorry.
Oh, he's back. He must have got a text message like I do, because when you're on your phone, we've learned that. I was out in Colorado trying to do the DPB show live with Ryan McKenzie back here in studio, and every time someone would call me, it would bump me off of the phone, so I'd have to go through the process of getting logged in again and scrambling, trying to go, gosh, I hope Ryan can carry the show. But speaking of Ryan McKenzie, his dad, Jerry McKenzie, who has a new diet and is going through a whole lifestyle change. We saw it, Jerry, on social media. He wants to just compliment you. Your work and exposure on Illinois Republicans and the state of our state is always eye-opening, Tom. It's crazy how close. Oh, Mrs. Producer, I thought you were going to put it up there for me. It's amazing how crazy, how close things. Oh, Mrs. Producer, you went away from it again. Things could be with the movement of conservatives pushing get the young voters now, most of MAGA now. Had another person up above. I mean, we've had many of the people joining us today commenting, Pam says, thank you, Tom, obviously, you for everything you've done and are doing. Wanda says, speaking, I got gas in Missouri Tuesday for $2.59 and got going to hit them again. Of course you are. These are the concerns. But Tom, I want you to know that whatever it's going to take, I believe we can do that together. And I know we do have unity in the grassroots. Not every grassroots organization is congenial towards each other, but I think what is coming down the pipe, and I want you to stay tuned because I want you to be part of this, my brother, because I know that we've gone a lot of miles, especially on the DB bus together. I think we get the band back together. I think we incorporate the Freedom Caucus and every other organization, but we need to take the wisdom of what you have put forth, because like Kyle McCarter with his whiteboard, he knew the solution. It was just a matter of getting the foot soldiers to fortify some of these counties that we know are very red, and then to mobilize within those counties, not 2,000, but 100, 400, 500 new voters. And if we do that over the course of 26, 28, and we get to 30, we can find ourselves as a red state again.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. If we found a way to get the resources with the right group of people and say, give us till 30, we can absolutely turn this state red. There is no doubt. I tell people all the time, and I know we're run over a little bit, it's important.
No,
When I go and speak to these organizations, I say, what's the difference between Texas and Florida and Illinois? And they'll start talking around, and I go, nothing. There's no difference. I said the only reason that Texas is red, I think, because they have Houston, they have Dallas, they have big blue cities, just
Austin,
like Florida.
yeah.
Yeah, Florida has Orlando, Tallahassee, Tampa.
Yeah.
They're big blue cities. But what happens is the rural and the suburban areas outperform those big blue cities and they keep them red. That's all Illinois has to do. We just have to have outperforming counties, and I've got a spreadsheet that takes every county of the state and says we need, out of this county we need 600, out of this one we need 20,000, out of this one we need 1,200, and every one of those counties, David, you can pick those votes up easily. Sometimes it's only 20% or 40% of the presidential voters. We need to drag them into the midterm, and if we do that, Illinois becomes red in a heartbeat. And it's not a presidential race. That's a different conversation. But the statewide and the House and the Senate, we could flip it red easy if we had the resources and the people all headed in that direction. But this conversation that you and I just had, it has never been had by the Illinois GOP in 5 years that I've been watching what they talk about. They don't have this conversation.
Well, I had a conversation with a chair close by to me, and he's a friend. He's been on my show before. Jim Rule out of Tazewell County. They have Michael Watley coming in for their Lincoln Day dinner, trying to figure out, because you talk about somebody that did all those things that we have expressed here today. That's what the Trump campaign did in order to overcome the craziness of a party that was going to outspend them by 30, 40, 50% of dollars.
That's how we won all 7 swing states, by doing exactly what you and I just talked about.
Yeah, and that's what Jim has Watley to come here to tell us what we already know. But Jim agrees with me on this, and he believes it is time for an emergency convention. We had a convention last year. We don't need to go back and relitigate what happened then, because we all were there.
I was sitting in the Lake of the Ozarks on the dock, fishing and drinking a beer, and had my earphones in, talking to everybody at the convention. Yes,
that's right. Well, I know that you were definitely behind the scenes and giving some wise counsel on what we should be doing, and I was there to watch it play out, and it truly is an episode of the Jerry Springer Show. That's all I can say about it.
It is. It was 100%. That whole convention was about the swamp.
Yeah.
And I use that word literally. And you know what I mean when President Trump in 2016 said the swamp, I had no idea what the hell he was talking about.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's President talking about? Now in 2025,
I know exactly what he's talking about. And what the president had to fight within his own party in
Yeah.
2016 is exactly what we're facing right now in Illinois in 2025. It is
I like
our own party getting in our way, not willing to take the fight to the Democrats. It's
uh,
like they're ashamed to be Republicans.
I love that picture that you painted. It is a direct opposite. Obviously, we are the lapdogs of the Democrat Party, and it's the other way around in New Hampshire and in Washington, D.C. Right now, they have no ammunition. They can shoot all the bullets they want, but they don't have any. They wish they
Think of,
did, and we got to imitate that.
we do, and think and draw the analogy here. President Trump. I'll go away from him a second. So Governor Pritzker, when he was in New Hampshire, the tone, the mannerisms, the way that he presented himself,
Yes.
and then now bring him back to Illinois, he doesn't engage like that.
No.
And the reason that he doesn't engage like that is because he doesn't have to. When
No.
he's in Illinois, he wants everybody to be kumbaya. We all get along. Tony McCombie, she's great, and she's
Yeah.
really a good Republican because it subdues the opposition, right? So when
Yeah.
he's on the downside of that in New Hampshire, we got to fight like hell because his
Right.
people are losing. It's
Take it to
it's
the
all
streets.
tactics. It's all tactics.
Yep. Take it to the streets. Confront them where they're at. We got to get in their
Yeah, he
faces.
doesn't
We got to.
talk like that in
Yeah.
Illinois. He doesn't
No.
have to.
No. No.
And
Well.
the first time that we have a fighter come to Illinois, and Secretary Noem, the first time a fighter comes, a street
Yeah.
fighter, keep in mind she was governor of South
South
Dakota, which
Dakota.
is
Yep.
extremely red. She's a street fighter. She knows what it takes. She comes
Yep.
to town and gives a 15, 20-minute, 30-minute speech. And who does that bring out of the closet? Pritzker.
That's right.
He doesn't come
And
out of the
Alexi.
closet for Tony McCombie or John Kern.
They were triggered because yes, they're all over social media giving their whole spiel, which is what it is. But you know what, Tom, I want to continue this conversation, and like I said, we are looking for a keynote speaker for our upcoming event, the emergency convention. We want to have it in either Bloomington, Peoria, Effingham, or Champaign. We thought if we could do that maybe those folks that are loyal to you and were also loyal to Darren would be able to make it from the north, and the people from the south if we kept it centralized enough. But I think we need to come together and say, PowerPoint presentation, like you said, by the numbers, it's a plan, map out the plan, and then go to work, because we have to do it before they circulate petitions, because we need we need viable candidates that can run against some of these positions that are currently held. I
Agreed.
believe at this point, every seat held by a Republican needs to be primaried.
I'm okay with that.
And because I know what happened down when I went to Fayette County, and the IEA put up that guy that was there that
Matt Hall.
invited me, to be at his table. And I was like, does he not realize? And Blake comes over and we hug it out. You come over, we hug it out. I had to believe that guy kind of after that was like, I don't have a chance to win.
He didn't have a chance. He got like 20% of the vote, and now he's not even involved in politics anymore.
Yeah. That was the end of him. But that's what I believe this convention is about. And I believe it takes a grouping, because ultimately we need someone that is telling the troops. I mean, every army needs a general. And that's what I liken this to. It's a fight. JB's right. It is a war, and it's a fight, and we need to take the fight to him.
It's a street fight. And we have to get our people to, and that's why I kept telling them, don't engage with JB Pritzker talking about this crap. Nobody cares. If you are in whatever county you're in, wherever you live, your energy, 100% of your energy needs to be on what precinct am I in, and how many new voters that are low propensity do I need to bring into the game now. If you're not talking about that, you're wasting your energy. You're wasting your energy.
And we've been doing that here in McLean County. We happen to be a Souris County. we've been, I think, 4 years. We were one of the initial counties that came on. And granted, it took me a little while to start understanding. I I appreciate what the people at Cirrus are doing, but they're not.
Barrett's a very intelligent individual.
And I believe that's the first time I saw unreliable voters when they sent it to my phone, and I could look at that. I had 88 unreliable voters, or 86 in my precinct 5 of
Uh-huh.
normal, and I could say these are the only people I have to go and talk to and say, hey,
That's
listen,
it.
88. I don't need to convince the people who vote all the time to go vote.
No, the people that are voting every time, they're solid Republicans. You don't spend 5 cents on them.
Yes.
You don't do anything with them. You focus on the unreliable, low propensity voters. That's where all of your resources go. And again, that philosophy, I mean, Barrett Davies is a brilliant man. He understands this stuff you and I are talking about seamlessly.
Yeah.
And the consultants, they just waste money talking to the people you don't even need to be talking to.
Yeah. And that's end game. We can do it, Tom. I look forward to the future. I really do. I am hopeful for Illinois. I believe we will be no longer the land of make-believe, but the land of Lincoln again. But it's going to take us a lot of time, a lot of travels. The road is definitely a narrow road, but we're going to make it.
Yes,
Tom,
sir.
I got to put it back up here again. Add to stage. There he is. I'll blow it up a little bit. Go out to his page, Thomas DeVore. Like, subscribe, share Tom's messages, notify people, because ultimately, I don't believe Tom didn't want to make himself the leader of the party by any means, but
I
I
have
think
no interest.
that by default he became that, because this is a time where we need people speaking honestly, transparently, and openly about the problems we have. I mean, I've got problems. Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about my personal problems? I'm
I
not
done more
interested.
stupid shit in my life you could possibly imagine. But when it comes to doing what I'm doing for the Republicans, I'm not doing anything other than trying to help us win, right? I'm
That's
not
right.
trying to become congressperson or U.S. senator or any of that stuff. I mean, in April of 2020, when COVID came, and I'm looking around for my elected people to start defending children and small business owners and people
Yeah.
like that, and nobody did anything. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with these people? Boy, the last 5 years have been eye-opener for me. I mean, it's been an eye-opener.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I shared with Darren over time, is like, you know what? Every group of guys and ladies needs someone who, like Mungo in Blazing Saddles, that'll go up and smack that horse upside its head. And we needed somebody like that. I mean, that's not Darren Bailey, and that's not even DPB, but that's Tom DeVore.
And the thing you have to be willing to do, and I joke about this all the time too. It's like, you have to do that. You have to be in human nature is, and I'm just weird in that regard. I mean, my parents were poor. I grew up in a trailer park. My mom was a great lady on welfare. I don't care what people say. I mean, if the Chicago Tribune or Tony McCombie or John, whoever, they want to write 50,000 articles about me, about how I don't care. It doesn't affect my life. It doesn't affect who I am. I'm not going to run away from them. And they don't know how to deal with that, because I mean, they can say whatever they want. It doesn't impact me. So
It doesn't
I will
shut down the
proverbially.
egg roll machine.
It doesn't do that. And you know what? I tell people all the time, if I'm in my life back in the trailer park, I don't care. I'm not going to shut up, and I'm not going to quit telling people what most others are thinking. I mean, if Tony's and the Johns and if they don't like, because I explain to people, this is who they take money from, this is what they vote for. If that's a problem, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Well, brother, I like I said, I was a Kyle McCarter acolyte. I obviously am as close can be with Darren Bailey. You and I got to know each other. I believe that you are a man on a mission, and it's a mission for good. It's a mission to educate.
That's
And
it.
to inspire people to do the right thing. And that's what's needed here in Illinois. Tom, appreciate you being
you,
on
sir.
the DPB show. Hey, I will be back in touch. I want to keep you in the loop on everything going on with Jim Rule, Ray Estrada, which is another gentleman I'm going to have back on the show next week. Ray kind of found out the hard way when he went up to run for Congress, and they kind of shuffled him out of the game. A man whose family had generals and presidentes in Nicaragua knows about the immigration, and he had more insight and was inspiring more people, Hispanic people in Illinois, to vote. And suddenly he wasn't the golden child. It was a gentleman from up in Rockford, Joe McGraw. But anyhow, I've reconnected with Ray. Ray's on board. We've got a lot of people. Ray doesn't care whether he holds an office. What he cares about is his home, and that's Illinois. But we appreciate you, Tom. I will look forward to getting back with you and having you back on here at the DPB show.
All right. Take care, David. See you.
All right. Take care. All right, folks. Wow. It's the longest DPB show so far on record. I hope that you go out and you share. This conversation is not being had anywhere else. Folks, I don't want to tell you that I'm short on Illinois, because I'm not. I'm long on Illinois. I want Illinois to return to the home that I grew up in. And it's going to take me, you, and everyone we know. Tom just gave us a roadmap to return our state, to return our party, the Republican Party, to the way it used to be. And not to say the way it used to be, because I think there was a lot of brokenness in the Republican Party. But this is the new Republican Party. This is the working class Republican Party. This is where people shower before they go to work and shower when they get home. This is who Charlie Kirk talked about. And we need to light the fire, because if we don't do it, folks, there's nobody coming. No one's coming to rescue us here. Hey, I appreciate you. Let me go ahead and just pray real quick. Father God, we just thank you. We thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity. Lord, it's hard to have these conversations, because I do truly believe that we care about people. Unfortunately, there are people that come to steal, kill, and destroy. And when we have a fighter like Kristi Noem, who shows up in our state and is willing to put herself out there, when we have a Tom DeVore who's willing to go all in, and there's nothing, Lord, you see his heart, you know him, you know this man. This man might be a little rough around the edges, as the old saying goes, but you know his heart, and his heart is truly for the people, and the people, all the people, not just some of the people. Lord, we thank you for this show. We thank you for the days that lie ahead. Continue to guide and lead us in all of our ways. In the holy name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Hey, I love you. Look forward to seeing you Tuesday. Have a show planned to get more in depth on this particular illegal immigrant who took the life of a young lady down who happened to be an activist working on the other side of the ledger, down in Springfield. Kristi Noem made mention of it. Of course, it's created a hubbub, but there seems to be a lot of unanswered questions. And we're going to have a special guest on to kind of go through that, break that down on Tuesday. Like I said, just mentioned to Tom, we're going to have Ray Estrada on here on Thursday of next week. I believe that's where I have him scheduled. Ray was running for the 17th congressional seat. As you heard me tell Tom, a lot of craziness went on. He wasn't the golden child chosen by the Republican Party, which usually is an indication that he's the person that we need. But hey, we're going to cover it all. We'll be back on Tuesday. Once again, like, subscribe, share. We will see you then. I bid you farewell.